Hey guys, welcome back to the Fishing Teacher, and appreciate you guys coming by the channel to check out today's episode. And guys, today I want to break down a little bit the tournament I fished yesterday at Stockton Lake in Missouri. This is a typical pre-spawn tournament, and I sort of want to lay out what happened to me in this tournament, in practice in the tournament, to sort of like see how the patterns unfold and how fish bite this time of year. I think when I get into detail on my practice and my tournament and how I caught the fish and why, it's really going to add up to a lot of good information for you guys to be able to use on your own. So we're going to get into that in today's video here. Also, guys, a couple quick things just like to run by you guys for get started to help support the channel if you like the content here. Right now, we do have my spring Fish the Moment lake map breakdowns up on the fishthemoment.com website. If you guys are looking for some good places to fish on your favorite lake or a lake you've never been to before, this is a great resource. These are lake maps I built for Fish the Moment that give you 40 GPS waypoints on every lake. So I'll have the Fish the Moment lake map breakdown link in the description of this video if you guys would like to check it out. And also, guys, I do have my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of the video. If you guys like the Fishing Teacher and you want to give something back to the channel, and you need to order tackle, you might as well just use and bookmark my link, because the channel gets a small percentage of a commission on anything you buy. So that's a win-win for everybody if you like the channel, and me and my family thank everybody that's been doing that. We really appreciate it. Okay, guys, let me run through how this happened. I'm going to give you guys a scenario, exactly how the lake was setting up and how I fished and how I caught them. And it's just going to be for educational purposes, because this is something that I always learn something different myself. Even as much as I fish, guys, every day on the water, I learn something. Okay, here's the scenario that was in front of me when I started practicing on Thursday last week. I practiced half a day on Thursday and about a half a day on Saturday, and then I fished the tournament yesterday, which is Sunday. Now, you guys have heard me talk about on the channel a lot the last month about pre-spawn bass fishing, and I've been talking about how to do it, techniques, and the type of areas. This is a perfect illustration of what I'm talking about. When I got down there, the water temperature was in the mid-50s. On Thursday, it was warming up. We had a warming trend. Water visibility was about 1.5 feet. It had some nice stain to it where I was fishing. And in this particular situation, it was a part of the lake that had a lot of bluffs and flats on it. So in other words, like one side of the lake could have a lot of bluffy banks and steep banks, and the other side would have flat gravelly banks. Again, about 1.5 feet of water visibility, water in the mid-50s, warming up. Now, I knew since the water was in the mid-50s and the water was stained and it was a pre-spawn, I knew these fish were going to be shallow, and I knew there probably wouldn't be as many suspended fish in that particular water visibility. So given that, I decided, that's how I based my approach on. So what I had to do on Saturday, is the day before the tournament, I had to figure out how to catch the bigger fish and how to catch a limit in this tournament. So I had a jig on, I had a spinnerbait on, I had a chatterbait on, I had a jerkbait on, I had a mag draft on, and I had 3 or 4 different type of crankbaits for this particular situation. In practice on Saturday, it was glass smooth and bright and sun. So I spent a lot of time pitching and flipping a jig around. I fished a jerkbait a little bit. I didn't think they'd hit a jerkbait, but I wanted to try it because I have caught them this time of year on it in off-colored water. I fished the chatterbait. There wasn't enough wind for the spinnerbait, and I fished a crankbait a lot. And I rotated it up. And it's like I couldn't get a dang bite on a jig or a spinnerbait or a chatterbait or a mag draft or anything. The only thing that I could get bit on was a crankbait. So it sort of clued me in on the fact of the mood and the personality of the fish. The fish did not want a slow bait, and they did not want any type of a shad pattern bait. They wanted a crawdad pattern crankbait. Once I started getting a few bites, I started catching them on that Megabass Super Z2, that crawdad pattern one. And I switched up. I put on a square bill. I put on several different type of crankbaits. I mixed with colors, and I couldn't catch anything except on a crawdad pattern. So I narrowed it down. I had 3 or 4 different crawdad patterns. I had, a couple different crankbaits. I had a wiggle wart. I even tried a crawfish lipless crankbait, the Megabass, several different ones out there. And I started catching fish on the crawdad crankbaits. And I started narrowing it down a little bit as far as the depth that I needed to be in and the exact type of bank structure. And here's what I figured out. These fish were setting up in that 3 to 5 foot zone. That's where they were. And the last day of practice on Saturday, I caught probably 10 keepers, and every one of them were about 2¼ pounds, but I did catch a 6-pounder. So that told me that the bigger fish were starting to move up and that, I had a chance to catch some bigger fish. First morning of the tournament, you guys may have heard, I won't bore you with the details, but anyway, I spun a hub on my prop. So after about 10 o'clock in the morning yesterday, I didn't get a fish anywhere where I wanted to fish. I had to fish right where I started, just back and forth all day because I didn't have any way, a big motor to move me around. Caught a ride in back to the weigh-in with a friend of mine. So right off the bat, I caught my biggest fish, about a 3½ pounder on a crankbait. And what I had done is there was a laydown log in the water, and I threw that crankbait over that laydown log, and that fish hit it. Now, in practice, every time that I came to a laydown log, I would flip a jig in there or some type of a creature bait. And there was a laydown log about every 50 yards on these. I was fishing long channel banks and bluff banks, paralleling with the crankbait. And every time that I came to a laydown log, I'd flip something in there or slow roll a spinnerbait past it, and I couldn't get a bite. But in the tournament, guys, is every one of those laydown logs that I came to, I could take a crankbait and it'd just be one log laying in the water, and I'd throw that crankbait over the log and crawl it over the top of the log, and it'd come down and those fish would hit it. I wound up catching a limit on a crankbait around those logs. Now, if you saw some of the videos that I did recently, I was talking about how wood is not that good in the pre-spawn. I like to fish rock. This is one of those things that happens in bass fishing that proved me wrong. But it's an exception to the rule. If I look back over the past 30 or 40 years, I've caught way more fish just off of straight rock than I have with wooden rock. But for whatever reason, it was a combination of the water temperature, the water clarity, the personality of the fish. They were on that wood and they only wanted a crankbait. I mean, I kept thinking, it's like, okay, I know these fish are on this wood. I got to figure out if there's a big one laying on that wood, I need to fish a big bait. I need to fish a jig or a spinner bait or chatterbait or roll a mag draft over it or something. They wouldn't touch it. They only wanted that little crankbait. And this is what you're going to find out in fishing, guys, is that there's always a bait that the fish prefer. And most of the time, there's no explanation to it. It just is what it is, and you cannot overanalyze it. For example, I can sit and talk about this crankbait over the log deal, and I can't for the life of me tell you why they wouldn't hit anything else. I mean, it's just one of those mysteries that just remains in fishing. So anyway, that was a pretty much guaranteed fish when I came to the laydown logs, but I still caught a bunch of fish in between them. I wound up in the tournament staying with a crawdad crankbait, and I was fishing a small one, that little Megabass Super Z2, 8-pound test Seaguar and VizX line. I had it on a spinning rod, and I was making parallel casts down those rocky banks with that crankbait and just caught the fire out of them. I mean, I caught a lot of fish and a lot of keepers because I had narrowed down the bait and the bait profile. They didn't want a large crankbait. They didn't want a real small one. They wanted just like a little medium crankbait. Had to be some type of a crawdad pattern with some red or orange in it. Didn't really matter, just some combination of that with just a medium stop and go retrieve. That's what they wanted. And it's typical pre-spawn deal, guys. Every one of these fish were setting up on those channel banks that I talk about a lot, probably feeding on crawdads. It was one here and one there. There's always going to be high percentage areas on those places, little rock outcroppings, little rock transitions, that type of stuff. But it was just, one of those things that I want to try to teach you guys in this tournament. It's like, once you figure out where there's a few fish at, and I knew the fish were using this water, it was obvious. Once you are confident that you know what type of structure the fish are using, that is when you really, really have to focus on finding out the right bait and the right color. That is how you maximize the area. Because if I would have stayed with a spinnerbait or a square-bill crankbait or a chatterbait or whatever, I may not have caught nothing. I wound up catching 15 keepers in the tournament. But you have to isolate what the fish want that day in and day out. And here's another thing that I'll tell you guys, there's always an exception to the rule. In practice on Saturday there, we didn't have any wind. And I really felt that we needed wind for the spinnerbait and the chatterbait to work. That's usually when those baits are better. And we had a lot of wind the day of the tournament. We had like a 15-mile-an-hour wind. So I had not caught them on a chatterbait or spinnerbait, and I tied them back on in the tournament because I said, these fish are going to fire up on the spinnerbait and the chatterbait, and they didn't. It's like everything was perfect for a spinnerbait and a chatterbait to work, but it did not work. And that goes back to the fact that in bass fishing, you have to have a game plan to start with, and you have to have an idea of how you think the fish are going to bite. Ultimately, though, guys, you have got to listen to what the fish are telling you, because they will tell you, they'll tell you what they want and what they don't want. And there's a fine line between giving them something that they want. Say, I knew they wanted the crankbait, and I could have spent all day with that crankbait, but even in the tournament, I gave myself the opportunity for a bigger fish by, say, for example, if I was on a little hot stretch where I was fishing like a 50-yard stretch where I got 2 or 3 bites. When I got 2 or 3 bites and I knew the fish were there, I'd pick up that big spinnerbait and I'd throw it for a dozen casts. Or I'd pick up that big square bill or the chatterbait or flip a jig on those places where I knew the fish were, and I still couldn't get any bites on it. So that goes to show you how bait sensitive the fish are a lot of times, not just in the pre-spawn, but any other time of the year. The main thing about it, guys, I just wanted to run by that scenario, and you can take from it whatever you want to take from it. That's just what happened to me in that situation. And that's how I have learned a lot about bass fishing, is I'll have a friend of mine tell me exactly how they caught their fish, and I can assimilate that and I can put it into my memory bank where I can try it and incorporate it into my own style when I'm out on the water. So anyway, guys, I hope it helps you guys catch a few more fish, and we'll check in later.